Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, these are all companies I used as an athletic director. They're all great companies. You should be using them too. So take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our interview, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. You've probably heard me say before, probably one of the best purchases I've ever made as an AD was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thank you to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an AD, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just love the tools that Huddle provided. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We want to say thanks to Snap Mobile, particularly Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, I'm telling you, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at our school with great success, and so will you. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it, and it's Snap Raise. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform you will use every single day, whether it's scheduling or rosters, results. Their athletic clearance and eligibility platform alone is a game changer. Go to homecampus.com to see all the details. That's homecampus.com. We want to say thank you to Gipper. Go to gipper.com and let their team turn you into a social media marketing guru. Whether it's a small social media post to celebrate a victory or an entire newsletter to showcase all the great things that your athletic department is doing, the team at Gipper is going to have you up and running in no time. It's professional graphic design made easy. Go to gipper.com for more information. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to their website and check out their interactive touch screen video consoles. You put one of their units in your gym lobby or your main school hallway, it's going to be like a magnet for kids, for coaches. How about sponsors? Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. We'd like to thank Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio University program, and it was a great experience. And while you're completing your master's, you also get to complete 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. We want to thank our good friends at Hometown. Hometown is changing the game for schools and organizations with their platform that includes things like, well, digital ticketing. They're still the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges, but how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction? Whether you're a principal, an athletic director, even a coach, Hometown is going to show you how to save time, raise more money, and bring your community together. That's hometown.com. And we want to make sure to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. At my school, we use surveys for everything, kids, coaches, parents, and the information that would come back was almost always over the top positive. I'm talking 98% approval. We still got to hear from those squeaky wheel parents, but the surveys allowed us to hear their concerns, usually address them before they turned into something big. But having that 98% approval data, incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with that frustrated parent, maybe your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. And don't forget to mention the podcast. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're staying right here in Florida today, and we truly have a really cool guest. Our guest today is Nancy Hogshead. She has an incredible background, and regular listeners know I don't often do this, but I'm going to go ahead and read some of her bio so you know exactly who we are visiting with today. Nancy's the founder and the CEO of an organization called Champion Women. We're going to hear a lot about that later in the podcast. She is also, oh, by the way, a three-time Olympic champion. She's a civil rights attorney. We're going to hear about that. And she's truly an advocate for women's sports. As the founder and CEO of Champion Women, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing legal advocacy for girls and women in athletics, she's also a celebrated keynote speaker and a leader on a national level, serves on numerous leadership committees, and is a respected contributor to the national and international sports policymaking process. Talking athletically, her athletic legacy includes a truly remarkable performance at the 1984 Olympics, where she earned 3 gold medals and a silver medal. She was a 2-time Olympian, also qualifying for the 1980 Olympic Games, which the U.S. chose to boycott. And throughout her 8-year career on the U.S. national team, she was undefeated as a high school and college swimmer in dual meets. She earned a number of accolades. She was recognized as one of Florida's greatest athletes of the 20th century, and she's been inducted into 13 Sports Hall of Fames. I'm not done. Internationally recognized as a legal authority on sports, Nancy has testified before Congress multiple times. She's authored numerous scholarly and mainstream articles. She also has an acclaimed book, Equal Play, Title IX and Social Change, which chronicles the impact of Title IX on American sports. She has been recognized and honored in a number of ways, recognized as a power player by Street and Smith Sports Business Journal. She was also named one of the most influential figures in the history of Title IX by a magazine called Sports Illustrated. You might have heard of it. We are so honored and humbled to have Nancy Hogshead on the Educational AD Podcast. Nancy, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jake. I appreciate it.
Well, you and I connected recently on LinkedIn. You were very kind to respond to my connection request. And as I read, your profile, which included a lot of what I just shared, I just said, this is somebody that our listeners, primarily high school and college ADs and coaches, really need to hear. And oh, hey, it's also going to be, I think, a very enjoyable interview. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us your quick bio, as I like to say. Give us your life story in 2 minutes. Maybe just take us up through your own college days, and then we'll take a break. But what's the Nancy Hogshead origin story?
Oh, I feel like you all pretty much covered so much of it. So I started swimming. My parents are from Iowa. I was born in Iowa City. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon, which is kind of my secret weapon. Being an elite athlete is because you're always needing information. And so he was a professor at University of Florida. So my first coach ever, for swimmers out there will know, is Eddie Reese, who has been the head coach, just retired, the head coach at University of Texas for the past, I don't know, 35 years or so. And then moved to Jacksonville, Florida. And then his brother became my coach, Randy Reese. And he's the one who said, you can be great if you want to, but you're going to have to do it, because I used to miss practice and stuff. So then at 12, I was the number one. I held the national age group record for 12-year-olds. And then at 14, I was number one in the world. So between like first, third in the world, between 1980, I'm sorry, 1976 to 1984. That's a lot of yards. It's a lot of swimming back and forth.
Wow. Again, I appreciate you sharing that chronology. Now, swimming is one of those sports, let's say elite swimmers, it's kind of a full-time job. When you were in middle school, high school, did you ever say, well, geez, I'd like to try volleyball or maybe run on the track team? Was that a thing for you?
Oh yeah, I was actually better at gymnastics than I was swimming, but I'm 5'10", even now, back in the day I weighed 162. Of I was like 11% body fat. I'm just really muscular. There was just no way I was ever going to be really good, but I really loved gymnastics. I thought it was fun. And I ran cross country and I played a little volleyball, but I mean, when you're at 12, if you're already sort of going to senior nationals, which I was at age
Mm-hmm.
12, then you're focused there. And also I had a coach that was always like, "Look, come on in here." So um yeah, but yeah, no, I always encourage people to do as many sports as they can. Back in
Sure.
my day, there was a time limit in that women didn't have opportunities after age 18 because there was no Title IX. When I turned 16 is when there was like a fire hose. Just all of a sudden, I could go to college pretty much anywhere I wanted to on full scholarship because of that law. Thank you. And uh, so I got 4 more years more than I thought I was going to be able to get.
Let's go and talk about that. Well, actually, before we do college, at high school, was high school swimming a thing back in your day, or was it still AAU and club swimming?
High school swimming was a thing, and somebody like me is going to be more focused on going, like you have back then. You had, the state high school championship meet, then you had nationals, then you had whatever the international meet was, whether it was world championships or Pan Ams or dual meets with the East Germans or Russians. Um, right. So that was on the schedule, but it wasn't something anybody tapered for. If anything, my coach didn't want me to even wear a skin suit, still wanted me to wear nylon for it. So,
You, boy, usually I'm and I say this very respectfully, usually I'm far and away the oldest person on the podcast here. I think we're about the same age. And you mentioned something, the U.S. versus, the Eastern countries and Russia. I remember not doing that, certainly, but watching that on Wide World of Sports and things like that. Any memories from some of those meets at the
oh,
international level?
well, I have so many, but that's not what this podcast is about. But I was on ABC's Wide World of Sports, which back in the day, there were only three channels and
Exactly. Yes, yes.
watched ABC's Wide World of Sports. But so it was me and Tracy Hawkins and Bonnie Glasgow swimming across in the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. So yeah,
That was you. That was you in that swim clip. All right.
me.
Okay. All right. I have that in my video file. I bring it up every once in a while when I do a presentation that this is what ESPN.
I competed. We went through Checkpoint Charlie, right? And like the armed guards come through, and it was very serious. Was in Russia, saw the long lines to be able to get bread or whatever they wanted. Yeah,
Oh,
I got up close and personal to politics, how it played out in people's lives for
oh,
sure.
oh my gosh, we're gonna have to get you back on to talk about that. All right, college now. You talked about those opportunities coming through. What do you remember about the recruiting process and how'd you end up where you ended up?
Sure. I ended up going to Duke University and really so my brother was at Harvard and I kind of wanted to follow him. There was a pretty good coach there at the time. Thank God I didn't go for him. He's now banned for molesting his athletes. So bullet dodged, but I really wanted that full scholarship. I felt like I earned it And so what was the best school I could go to? So then it was down to Duke and Stanford. And the difference was I live in Jacksonville, Florida, as you were saying earlier. And so I could drive to and from Duke, whereas California just seemed like it was an awful long way to be away. I had already moved away from home when I was 15 to train for the 1980 Olympics. So I had 2.5 years of living in Gainesville, Florida, because Randy Reese moved to be there. But anyway, went and a lot of people are, why didn't you go to University of Florida? Because I had already trained with Randy for a long time, and it was really, really hard. So yeah, that's what I was hoping to be able to swim, but have it keep it in perspective. And I'm not very good at that. So I still have never learned that lesson.
Well, and again, I think people that succeed at that highest of levels, that's kind of how they're wired. I don't think it's right, wrong, good or bad. It's just the way it is.
Right.
Wow. We're gonna go and take our first break, but we are gonna come back with more. Our guest today is Nancy Hogshead. She's the founder of Champion Women. She's a lawyer at the highest level. We're going to talk about all that and more, but let's take that break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thank you to our good friends at Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables and Video Boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. You've heard me say many times, probably one of the best purchases that I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thank you to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there's so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Nancy Hogshead. She's the founder of and CEO of Champion Women. Also was an Olympic medalist, 3-time gold medal winner, plus a silver in the 1984 Olympics. But your Olympic journey, if you will, started before 84. Can you take us back to those days that you were training for the 1980 Olympics, which for the United States never happened?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was number one in the world in 1977. And that next year, I had to move away from home in high school to be able to train for the 1980 Olympics. And I really thought that was like the grand hurrah. So I did, and made the team. But we found out, I guess around January or February, that the United States was not going to go. So, quick history lesson: the Soviet Union back then, what is now Russia, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. At the same time, Iran, all the same bad players, but Iran was holding hostages,
Right.
for United States hostages. So in where I lived, there were billboards all over that said how many days that the hostages were being held, as a way to get the public focused not on that. This was a way for Carter to focus on something else. So he kept us home from the Olympics, and there was litigation about it. Anita DeFrance brought the case. I've been teaching this case for the last 25 years. I give her all sorts of credit because she sued and she really sort of became part of the system. But the court said that essentially that Olympic athletes were akin to soldiers, that we were doing our duty for the country. And at the time, now remember, I'm only 18 years old, but I bought it. There wasn't social media. There wasn't anything else. I get to Duke University. I am a political science major, and who ends up teaching my class is the guy that ran against Nixon I'm blanking on his name, but he ran against Nixon. So he's teaching my class and he starts talking about, the boycott, the 1980 boycott, and how it was much more a political move than a really sort of founded on substance move.
Was that McGovern?
McGovern, George
Yeah,
McGovern. Yeah,
George
he was my
McGovern. Yeah.
professor.
Hmm?
Yeah, right, at Duke University. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was when kind of the light bulbs went off like, oh my God, I was a pawn, I was used. You can't imagine how hard that swimmers work. I got up at 4:45 in the morning, swam from 5:30 to 7:30 during school. I either lifted weights or ran on alternate days, and then 2.5 more hours after school. I mean, this is I promised myself after the 1984 Olympics that I would never give myself over that far again because, like, I would have killed myself. And I kind of joked when I just said it, but like literally, I would have killed. Like I was all in. And so then my senior in high school, after I finished my senior, then I went to college in 1980 was my freshman year. So I'm
Right.
63. So then I just thought I was going to have this, nice college career. And my coach told me at Duke, Coach Bob Thompson, you're going to be in the 1984 Olympics. And I remember thinking like, you just go ahead and think that because I'm not going to be doing that anymore. And he was right. He was right.
So as that thought began to germinate with you, okay, well maybe I can't be or whatever. Um, when did you go back to being all in for those 84 Olympics?
Well, I'm going to say something that's going to be kind of triggering for people, and I hope they're able to hear it in the right way. So, my sophomore year in college, I was raped. I was out running. I could not have been stronger. I was probably in the 0.00001% of strong women. He was just a guy, and the fight wasn't even close. And so he dragged me into the woods. If you know Duke University, it's on Campus Drive, we call it the social run between East and West Campus. And that event changed my relationship with God, changed my feeling and my thoughts about feminism or about like being a woman in the world. It changed my ideas of advocacy. What I had to do to recover from having a brain that was like just overactive. What now today, this was 1981. So today we would just say, oh, it's just PTSD. But, and because I was raped in this very specific way, meaning I didn't know him and I hadn't been drinking and I wasn't wearing anything cute. Because of that, at that time, I got a ton of love and support and people willing to talk about it. If just the circumstance, I have so many people I know that just the circumstances are a little different, but that same unbelievable terror is still there. They don't get all that love and support and all they're not encouraged to have it change how they look at being a woman in the world. Um, so, so because of that, Duke allowed me to redshirt for the rest of my sophomore year. And when I came back, that was when Coach Thompson was like, okay, all you have to do to keep your scholarship is you just show up at the meets. You don't have to warm up. You don't have to do it. Just show up, get on those blocks. And I was like, I can do that. I mean, that'll be fine. So my first time, I was so out of shape, so out of swimming shape that I could barely make it through workout or not even workout. I could barely warm up. That's how bad it was. But I won. And I had all the muscle memory and I had all that. So, and it kind of gave me the hunger back. And I was like, well, just today, let me just go to one practice. Let me just lift today. Let me just, right. And so little by little throughout the semester, I was fully roped in. And then I realized, like, well, if I do want to do this, if I want to go for 84, I need to drop out of college for a year and a half because Duke wasn't a world class program. It was a very good college. Now it's phenomenal, phenomenal. They're kicking it, but it wasn't back then. So, so I dropped out of college for a year and a half, starting in January of 1993, and so did nothing but train for that year and a half, and made the 1984 team. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing, that part of your life. Appreciate the candor. Looking at your Olympic experience, obviously tremendously successful, going in, were you feeling confident? I mean, were you, number one in the world? Were you a long shot? What are your memories of those competitive days?
So I won. There was an international competition in January, and of course, Olympic trials were like June, July, around there. But so I won there. um, but then the big thing that happened was the East Germans, and back then as the Soviet Union still, they announced that they were going to boycott our Olympics. And, um, you know, just talking about drug testing, a little different subject, but the I was always upset that there were not adults in the room who were doing something about drugs in women's sports in particular. That we were supposed to shut up about it. We weren't just supposed to shut up, we were told explicitly, if you talk about drugs in the press conference, you're going to get sent home. So, I always remember. So the reason why I'm on this podcast and as an Olympic champion is because the East Germans boycotted. So in all likelihood, they would have won. There was new drug testing. I don't know if they would have passed or not, but we all knew that they were doping. Everybody knew. Shirley Babashoff got a terrible deal in the 1976 Olympics. They called her Surly Shirley for saying the truth that these right these they were cheating, and she pointed out, and really the press just crucified her for it. I think they really owe her even more of an apology. And again, and who really owes her the apology are the leaders of the Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee, United States Swimming, etc. Because those are the adults in the room that should have been making it safe for us.
Well, again, we talk in athletics a lot about controlling or focusing on what you can control and the things you can't control. Obviously, the Russians making that decision, the East Germans, you can't control that. And, you
But
certainly.
disingenuous of me not to recognize that that the fact that they were not there, they were boycotting. I mean, I may have won other medals if we had gone to Moscow, and I'd be sitting here as a more Olympic, right? But it just goes, like, a lot of the work that Champion Women does is speaking to sport leaders about what their obligation to athletes is. Mm-hmm. And that's a big one.
And that's a perfect transition to our next segment. Once again, for listeners, our guest today is Nancy Hogshead, as you have just heard, a three-time gold medal winner and a silver medal winner at the 1984 Olympics. She's also the founder and CEO of Champion Women. We're going to hear all about that in a couple of segments, but let's take another quick break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Snap Mobile, particularly Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, I'm telling you, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at our school with our teams and had tremendous success, and so will you. Go to their platform, snapraise.com. Check out all their other great options. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it, and it's Snap Raise. We also want to say thank you to Home Campus. Home Campus is one of those platforms you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, results. Their athletic eligibility and clearance platform alone is a game changer. Go to homecampus.com, find out all the great things that they can do for you and your school, and don't forget to mention the podcast. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and let their team help you become a social media marketing guru. Whether it's a simple social media post to celebrate a victory or an entire newsletter to showcase all the great things that your athletic department is doing, the team at Gipper is going to have you up and running in no time. It's professional graphic design made easy. Go to Gipper.com for more information. That's Gipper.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. One more time, our guest is Nancy Hogshead. She is the founder and CEO of an organization called Champion Women. Now, Nancy, for our listeners' benefit, you're a lawyer, you're a law professor, you have done all these different things in this field, a speaker, an author, etc. But I know you want to share about Champion Women. So maybe share with our listeners a little bit. How did you get the idea to start it? What is it? And why? And I say this with tongue in cheek. Why should our listeners care? Because you should care.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So Champion Women, taken everything that I've done as a lawyer and as an advocate and just created my own organization. I wanted a smaller organization than other ones because I wanted to be able to speak freely. And if you have certain sponsors or whatnot, you can't always do that. So Champion Women, we have our three major areas. Our number one, equal opportunities. So the promise of Title IX was equality in college, in high school, in all school-based sports, that if a school gets federal funds, that they agree not to discriminate based on also race, color, national origin, sex, ability, and age. And so they're supposed to provide women with equal opportunities. In order to actually get that equality, schools would have to give women 71% more sports opportunities than they're currently providing. They need to give 1.2 million more opportunities in high school. So most girls don't know. I mean, Jake and I were talking earlier before we started to press the record button about how that there's like a conspiracy, and I mean that, not to tell current student athletes what their rights are under Title IX because they're really good. So we filed, as an example, 101 complaints with the Department of Education. As one example, UNC Chapel Hill needs to add 375 women to its athletic department to be giving women the same opportunities that they're giving men. And then we go through athletic scholarship dollars, then we go through recruiting dollars. So actually making the promise of Title IX happen is important to us. Getting more teams for women started. Okay, so that's one. Two is the whole issue of sexual abuse in sports. So when I was growing up, throughout my career, I could list on both hands plenty of national team coaches, big time coaches who had sex with their athletes. And how it was framed to me was that these were relationships. So I wrote the statute and was doing all the work, and the problem was there in a big way, but the Olympic Committee doesn't want legal liability. So then all of a sudden Larry Nassar hit and we were off to the races. So the rule that every 7-year-old should know, every 30-year-old athlete should know, every coach, every parent, the whole sports community is, coaches shall not have romantic or sexual relationships with the athletes they coach, regardless of age or consent. So There's a power dynamic there, and it should just be a black line rule, a black letter rule. Then the third area is making sure that women's sports stays for females. It's not on my bingo card to be advocating for. I don't like the topic, frankly, but the issue is men coming into women's sports. Having Leah Thomas come into the women's NCAA did enormous damage to the transgender community. That people in sports are uniquely set up to care about fairness in sport. And Jake, come on, you've got to have seen it in a million different places, right? They have a sticky ball or an underflated or using steroids or gambling, whatever the issue is, that just how important that fairness is. It's just a bedrock principle. So when people see unfairness, it's not going to go away. You're just going to have more and more rage. So just trying to keep men out of women's sports and women's spaces. So we're focused on that. Champion Women is part of the Women's Sports Policy Working Group with myself, Martina Navratilova, Donna Deverona, who sits on the board of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, Mariah Burton Nelson, amazing author. Go onto her Substack, Stronger Women. Donna Lopiano, she used to be the athletic director at University of Texas, and was the head of the Women's Sports Foundation for 20 years. And Tracy Sunderland, he runs the interscholastic high school competitions. So we're trying to make sure that the women's category is protected. So those are our three areas: equal opportunities, sexual abuse, and making sure women's sports stays for women. That was a long answer.
No, not at all. And I'm glad you went into that detail. I guess with your permission, we've got, two segments here. Maybe in this segment, let's maybe take a deeper dive, as much as time will allow, into, again, how can athletic directors do the job that they want to do? I think the vast majority, men and women, they want to do right by their student athletes, but invariably there seem to be things that crop up every year where there's a Title IX violation. And then in our next segment, maybe talk about the idea of keeping women's sports safe. In our national organization, we have legal courses for ADs. One of them includes a very in-depth discussion of Title IX. One of the, I guess, components of that in trying to help ADs stay on track is the three-prong test. You're a lawyer, you see this, good, bad, and indifferent. Is the three-prong test a good way? I know there's been some criticism of it. In some ways it's applied.
So,
What's your feeling on the three-prong test?
It's old news. It is the law. It has been the law since 1979. Whether or not you agree with it or disagree with it, it is the law. And the more time that goes by, the less likely that any school is going to comply with any of the prongs other than proportionality. So, and it makes sense, right? That we want to give boys and girls, men and women, equal opportunities in sports. So if 1 in 10 men has an opportunity to play, 1 in 10 women should have an opportunity to play. This idea that, so for those of you that don't know, you want me to just go over the three-part test really quickly? Okay, quick as I can. Ready? Prong 1, proportionality, means equal, exactly what I just said, right? that the student body population, hypothetically 50-50, then your student athlete population 50-50. Prong 2 is, well, we're not quite there yet, but we have this history of continuous improvement. Okay, the law is now 53 years old. It's very unlikely that a school is going to be able to say, we're not a proportionality, but we have continuously, that graph has gone up. Champion Women has spent probably mid 6 figures to come up with graphs for every college and university or every conference or in the country, and to show the history of, like, whatever it looks like. And I've never seen a school that, looking at the data from the Equity and Athletics Disclosure Act, you can go into EADA. We took that data and turned it into something that people can understand readily. So go on to Title IX Schools, TITLEIX schools.com, and you can look up your school, high school and college, and see how it is that they're doing. The third way is to say, you know what? We just don't have anybody who's interested or able to play sports at our school. So we don't have any unmet interest and ability. Now, that presumes that women or girls are less interested in playing sports, given that sports are rationed. I mean, just to give you an idea of how much rationing is going on, girls in Maine have twice as many sports opportunities as boys in Florida do. It's not that girls in Maine are that much more interested in sports. It is that that's what the schools are offering. So to say that girls in Florida, who are only 20% of high school girls in the state of Florida, are given a sports experience. Right? So that's why it's hard to meet, because the truth is girls and women really want to play sports. When you get to college, it's like, we're talking, 2 to 4% of high school athletes actually get to play in college. When you get to those scholarship dollars and those other opportunities, it goes down even less. How can they say that they're meeting the interests and abilities when you have so many kids that want to play? Girls, big shock, just like boys, when it comes to the aspect of, if you build the facility and you hire the coach and you tell the coach that the way that they're going to get paid is they need to get athletes on the team, they're going to do it. So, okay, so that is the 3-part test. Sorry, it was a little longer than I meant to do, but okay. No. But so yeah, that's the test.
No, I'm glad you did review it very well, and I like that you shared your opinion from that legal standpoint of how they work. Okay, let me ask you a quick question here. My experience as an AD in Florida, my last 20 plus years as an AD, was primarily in 3 different private independent schools, and we had great programs. I think we did a very good job of servicing our boy and girl athletes. At my final school in Tallahassee, we would do a lot of surveys every year, and we'd ask the kids, do you want to see new sports? What are we not offering that you'd like to offer? And just about every year, I would have, let's say, 6 or 7 girls come to my office and want us to start a flag football team, which in parts of Florida is just huge. And we already had in the spring, we had boys and girls tennis, both thriving programs. We had baseball and softball, thriving. We had track. We had over 100 kids, boys and girls, in our track program. We didn't have flag football, which in Florida was a spring sport. And I knew if we did start flag football, it would probably bleed off of all of our sports. Tennis would be okay. Track would be okay. Softball would probably die. But this is what I shared with those girls. I said, absolutely. What I need you to do is we need to have at least 15 girls that will sign up and come to a meeting and say, hey, we want to start flag football. If you get me 15 girls, I'll find a coach and we'll start a team. And, fortunately or unfortunately, they never could really get past that 7 or 8 or 9 people. It just wasn't viable at that point with our school population. Was I doing a good job or a bad job as an AD?
Bad job. Yeah, sorry, Jake. Yeah, just in that. So nobody ever says that about starting a new boys team. Nobody ever says, "Oh, we don't want to start a boys wrestling team because it's going to take from rowing or it's going to take from some other sport."
I actually did that with I had some boys. They wanted to start a bass fishing club, and I gave them the same response. I talked to some ADs in other states that had bass fishing as an official sport. And they said, well, you need to have at least 8 or 9 guys, and they could never, or students, and they never came up with it. But I understand what you're saying. I want to believe I was trying to be an advocate for those girls, but I accept your evaluation that I didn't do as much as I could have done. Okay.
I know, yeah, I'm saying that excuse, if you went to court and said, well, the reason why we don't is because I told them to come up with 15, it would not fly.
Right.
That
Okay.
that is a violation of Title IX to use that as the excuse. So in no other area do we demand that look, boys are just given sports opportunities, and girls have to demand it, have to ask for it, have to sue to be able to get it. Just if you just come with the assumption that girls want to play sports and boys want to play, and you cannot serve as big as the population is. You're never going to be able to serve them all. And so, okay, well, how many we're going to have? I'm just making up a number, 300 boys playing throughout the year. That's all three sports, different sports. And we're going to have 300 girls playing three different, right? And then we got to divvy up resources and facilities and the property and the coaching and everything else, because boys and girls really like playing sports. And just as somebody, who has done a lot of work in the area of sexual abuse, as somebody who was raped, I'm telling you, sports is how women regain their sense of physical self. It is how they regain it's how they calm the brain, is through hard exercise. Talk to any therapist, they'll tell you a better treatment than any medication is hard exercise. You learn that in sports. Women, like 1 in 4 of us is raped. So we need to be providing women with equal educational opportunities, and that includes sports.
Okay. Well, again, and this is exactly why, I wanted to have you on the podcast. So,
Yeah,
thank you for,
I hope okay, I'm
no,
being,
thank you for your honesty. And
yeah,
again, bad on me for not doing as good as I should have for those young ladies. We're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but let's do it right now. If one of our listeners wanted to find out more about Champion Women, or even just connect with you and add you to their network, and listeners, I think you have a tremendous resource here. What's the best way that they can get in touch with Nancy Hogshead?
sure. So the email that goes to the team is supportwomen@championwomen, all one word, .org. Supportwomen@championwomen.org. I'm available, as you found me on LinkedIn, but I'm on, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We try as hard as we can to be value added. We try not to just be pure cheerleaders. We try to let people know, like, here's what the law is, here's what the numbers are. Schools need to increase by 71%. As I said, there's way too much that current student athletes, they just don't know. If you look at one of the things that Jake and I were talking about before we hit the button, was just the differences in softball and baseball. So my daughters, when they were 7 years old, came to me and said, hey, Mom, they went to their third softball program. How come the boys have a scoreboard and we don't? Why do they have a concession stand? Why do they have restrooms and we don't? It was like they had kind of gone through, in Title IX parlance, it's called the laundry list. So you can't just give that opportunity. You have to give them an equal opportunity, meaning same quality facilities and coaching and locker rooms and equipment and travel, etc. And my girls noticed it at a very young age, and it wasn't that I ran them through, here's what the law is, girls. I think if athletic directors go out to their own facilities and look at it from that perspective, would a girl think that they were getting equality? Because if they're not, that is a terrible message to be sending to them for the rest of their lives.
Right. And again, that's such an important point. The physical facilities, the number of coaches, number of games, how they travel, equipment, et cetera. It's all stuff that ADs, you don't do it because you want to avoid the lawsuit. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Okay. So
Right. Right.
let let's go and take another break. I know that's shocking for our regular listeners, but we're going to come back with more with Nancy Hogshead and Champion Women. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different sports, or to show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. You put one of their units in your gym lobby or your main school hallway, it's going to be like a magnet for kids, for coaches. How about sponsors? Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their great products today. We also want to thank Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's degree from Ohio University, but my assistant athletic director did, along with thousands of others, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're completing your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. And we'd like to thank Hometown. Hometown is still changing the game for schools and organizations with their solutions that include things like, well, digital ticketing. They're still the number one digital ticketing provider for schools and colleges. But how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction, and a whole lot more? Whether you're an athletic director, a principal, even a head coach, Hometown is going to show you how to save time, how to raise more money, and how to bring your community together. Go to hometown.com. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Welcome back again. Our guest today is Nancy Hogshead, the founder and CEO of Champion Women. Nancy, we just got in talking about, three prongs and facilities and, equal opportunities, equal coaching staffs and that sort of thing. The last several years, there's been another, item on the Title IX plate regarding, I'm going to say biological males competing with and against and head to head with girls and women. And I know that's something that Champion Women is definitely passionate about. I'm passionate about it too, but can you share with our listeners who, again, are ADs and coaches, how do we navigate this both legally and I guess morally?
Yeah, that's a great intro. Well, first of all, I've been a women's sports advocate, my entire professional career. And so I am a sports advocate. I think sports makes better kids. I want more people participating in sports. Women, girls who do not identify with their sex. So they are transgender or they are gender fluid or they are non-binary, whatever, they compete in their sex category. And boys can too. So one of the things that I say frequently is if you really love the transgender community and you want to do right by the transgender community, then you'll have people compete according to their sex. Because sports uniquely will get people fired up about unfairness. And when people see men compete or boys competing in girls and women's sports, I mean, just steam comes out of their ears, more so than, I don't know, gambling or, when people, have sticky balls or something like that. As an athletic director, every athletic director I know can has that particular idea of fairness, right? Because that's how it is in meritocracy, is by having that fairness. There are lots of categories in sports. So at the high school level, right, there's AA, AAA, right? There's your state, your region, whatever. My last 2 years in high school, I was not allowed to compete in high school because I lived away from home. Why? It would have been unfair to the other athletes because I was, I don't know exactly frankly, why it wasn't, but point is, I wasn't allowed to. I did not qualify. So there are all kinds of weight categories. There are age categories. There are plenty of athletes who, for no fault of their own, maybe they failed third grade because of a reading disability that was undiagnosed. But as soon as they hit age 19, they're not eligible anymore to compete in high school sports. They didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing bad about them. They're just not eligible. Same thing with weight categories. And same thing, right? So we have all these categories to have inclusion. That's how we get more people involved in sport, is by creating categories. That's how we have, 9 million kids playing high school sports right now, something like that. Is because we have all these ways to make sure that the light athlete, that the young athlete, that they can all have a place to be able to compete in sports. All those categories I just mentioned. There is no bigger differential in categories than sex. The sex categories between males and females, even pre-puberty, is enormous. And I think swimmers and track and field athletes uniquely kind of get this because we train together. We've got the same coach. We work out. We go to the same competitions. First the women, then the men. And they're our buddies. And right? And I think sometimes these civil rights lawyers who I used to be peers with, but unfortunately I've gotten canceled, but people who never played sports, they don't understand how big that gap is. And they have this idea that like, oh, women just worked harder. If they just, if there weren't barriers to women entering into sports, if there was more Title IX compliance, which I'm all in favor of, as we talked about. But it's kind of insulting. Like, really? You think that I could have gone 11% faster if if I had worked harder? I mean, as I said at the very beginning of the show, having a dad as an orthopedic surgeon was just invaluable because you're constantly, every athlete listening to this, every athletic director, every coach knows that you're pushing it right to the very limit, but you don't want to, we called it tipping over. You don't want to get sick. You don't want to get injured. And so to have that sounding board with my dad about, I broke my sternum, and he's like, it's going to hurt like hell, but you're fine. Yo. As opposed to my shoulder would just click, and get off immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200, right? So being able to discern like when is the time to keep going on something and when is the time to pull back. It's the hardest thing in the world. There's not an athlete out there that doesn't want that, whose will is not stronger than their body. It just doesn't exist. So this idea that I could have even worked 0.1% harder than I did, I could not have. I could not have worked. I promise you, I could not have done any more or worked any harder. Katie Ledecky is a phenom in women's swimming, and she is 50 seconds behind Bobby Fink, who holds the world record in the mile. 5:0. That's almost 2 laps. In a 50-meter pool, in your high school size pool, that's 4 laps. So we have sports categories to have inclusion. That's why we have them. And I just find it so beyond frustrating when somebody who's not involved in sports. If you go onto our website, Champion Women, we have 2 petitions. One is for Title IX compliance, that what we were talking about before, and the second one is for women's sports to stay for women. Right now, we have 503 Olympians and Paralympians and national team members that have signed on. We have 4,000 competitive athletes that have signed on. So people in sport, they know the deal. What a big difference. Seriously, Jake, if you had an athlete come to you and said, I want to be like, so they're already a good athlete. Okay. So they've already been training. This is not like they're just new to the game. If they said, I want to be 3% faster than I was last year, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, you would look at their sports age, their chronologic age. How hard do they want to work? I mean, we can set that as a goal, but all that desire and all that hard work doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right. So, and Matt, like if they're already training hard, they're
Right.
already past puberty,
Yeah.
they've already have good coaching, and right, they're already right to tell Katie Ledecky that she's going to get 1% faster
Right.
is absurd.
Right.
So for her, you're going to go 50 seconds faster if you just work a little hard. It's so insulting
Right.
to women. Our bodies can do things men's bodies cannot do, and vice versa. And we need to respect what we both of us can do. Because
And
if we
you
want to have
right, and you're an elite athlete, or you were an elite athlete. You're an elite athlete. You're an Olympian. You know this. Athletes at that elite level, you're not talking about 3%. You're talking about maybe 0.3% as a possible improvement from season to season. So, yeah, so many questions.
go,
You on your website, and thank you so much for sending this to me. You sent, and if I misspeak or if I oversimplify, please correct me. You sent a chart that showed the research that you and your team had done regarding male athletes, biological males who had decided to compete against biological females. And some of these from every sport, okay? Some when they were males, when they were males, competing against males, some were in the middle of the pack. Some were pretty good competing against males. But when they decided to compete against females, all of a sudden they're in the top, whatever percent. Is that a fair summary?
yeah, it's a taking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Starting at the earliest ages, that there are biological differences between males and females. That means that in order to give girls and women equal opportunities in sports, they need to have their own team. There are two really good websites I recommend. Maybe this is one of the ones that I shared. One is called She Won, SHEWON.org, and the other one is HeCheated.org. And both of them they document like here's where or when, whatever, because most people think this is a rare occurrence because mainstream media, the New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, etc., will not cover it. So people are kind of in the dark. So we're on a roll, but again, this is not an anti-trans position.
Right.
This is a pro-trans position because there is not a family. Nobody in the stands is watching this and thinking that it makes them more loving or accepting of the trans community. Just the opposite. So if you're pro-trans and you want people to live their lives authentically, however it is that they identify, great. But we need to respect what boundaries are. Back in the day when I was in college, I was political science and, as I said, women's studies. And we talked a lot about how there are biological differences between men and women that need to be respected. There's pregnancy and lactation. There is sports. There are areas in law that we need to protect, say, women's restrooms, changing rooms, prisons, homeless shelters, prison, or excuse me, hospital wards, right? And we have boundaries around there because of male violence. So we need to respect, that's biology, that's male female differences. Then there's this other category called sex stereotypes, which is, how do you want to dress? What do you want to wear, makeup or not? Do you want to have short hair or long hair? That is a social construct that is purely, let people do what they dress however they please. But that's not real. That's not science. That's purely, what do people, so people like me believe that biology is real, but sex stereotypes, what it means to be a woman, like here, I'm a mother of three. I've got my own business. Do I have to abide by those, limiting sex stereotypes that tell me, like, I can't tell Jake that he's not correct about starting flag football, right? Do I have to abide by that? Or right, that, or if I'm straight or bi, right? I'm happen to be straight, but right, or a lesbian. We need to make sure that sport is a welcoming place for anybody, however they identify, whatever their sexual orientation is. Gay boys in particular have a really hard time in boys' sports. And we need to let it be known that they can be men. They can be full on awesome, great men and still be gay and participate in sports. So that's probably more than you asked for.
No, no. I think for me, the overriding theme I've gotten from you, among other things, is sports is fantastic. Sports is for everybody. There's also, we don't let a senior in high school go wrestling against a 12-year-old. We see that, we get it. And I probably will butcher your words, but I think you said there's no greater categorical difference than biological gender. Okay. And that's why, men, boys compete in their category, women and girls compete in theirs. Is that a fair statement?
It is. It
Okay.
is. There's if you want like a model policy, Tracy Sunland is part of our group. The National Scholastic Athletics Foundation has a great policy on their website. It's like, how do you make sure that they're not biological males competing? And it's not that hard. The presumption is whatever somebody says it is, but you give this opportunity that there could be a serious challenge. Now, I say, if there had been an opportunity for a serious challenge, I would have been challenged. I have been sex tested. I was in the 1984 Olympics, and the sex testing is a cheek swab. It doesn't involve any genital examinations ever at all. But that's only if there's a serious challenge. But anyway, go on to there's the National Scholastic Athletics Foundation, and they do have a really good policy there.
Okay. Well, this has just been phenomenal. So appreciate you coming on and sharing some wisdom, your own personal story. I really, really appreciate it. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the
Okay.
athletic director's toolbox, and it could easily be called the leadership toolbox. Now, you're not an athletic director, but I think you know your way around the world of athletics. We're going to have our final shout out to Athletic Surveys who sponsor this segment. When we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new AD. Heck, it could be a veteran AD. But I'm only going to let you put 3 tools in their toolbox. So let's take that break. And when we come back, we're going to see what Nancy Hogshead, Olympic champion, nationally known speaker and lawyer, is going to put in her new AD toolbox. We want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. In my school, we use surveys for just about everything for student athletes, for teachers, for coaches, especially for parents. And here's the cool thing, the information that would come back on these surveys was almost always over the top positive. I'm talking 98% approval. We still got to hear from our squeaky wheel parents, but the surveys allowed us to hear their concerns, usually address them before they turned into something big. But having that 98% data, incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with a frustrated parent, maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have had a tremendous visit with our guest today, Nancy Hogshead, Olympic athlete, law school professor, practicing lawyer, and the founder of Champion Women. We're going to give out all that contact information soon, but right now, I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director, a brand new leader, on their first job, but I'm only going to let her put 3 items in the toolbox. So, Nancy, what 3 tools are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. It's so good. So my first toolbox would be to be a lifelong learner. You're never done. Just like in as an athlete, you have to always be thinking of, how can I push off a little better? How can I get my everything, right? So so be a lifelong learner and always be willing to listen for more. Number one. Number two is I would say don't be afraid of athletes' rights. So Title IX is just one example of the rights that athletes have that is certainly not the only ones, but that will make your program much better and will you're going to have healthier athletes, you're going to have more empowered athletes. If they're not expected to be soldiers, if they're not expected to be just do what I say, and right. Okay, so that's 2. Third is I would say that not to have people love their bodies. That if what you're doing is setting somebody up for the rest of their lives, they need to really respect their bodies and love their bodies. They're going to be better athletes. They're going to be able to stay in it. They're not going to have these long-term injuries. I've been teaching sports law for the last 20 something years, and about half of all my classes, I will say, how many of you have lifelong injuries from high school sports? You know how many lifelong injuries I have? 0. So, and that only comes from a deep love and appreciation for the body. If you're mad at it, everybody wants their body to be able to do more than what they want it to be able to do. Like, how come I can't, right? So, but that mindset is limiting, and it's going to lead to those lifelong injuries. It's if you want to make better kids who better, what we know about what a sports experience means. I just finished updating this for an amicus brief that we're filing. Higher test scores, better graduation rates, more likely to go to college. They make more money. They stay in the workforce. Amazing things what it does for the United States as an economy. It is phenomenal. We know that sports is not just associated, that actually causes that. So, and then just lifelong health of what it means to have had a high school sports experience, osteoporosis, heart disease, cancer. The best thing you can do to prevent breast cancer is high school sports. It reduces it by between 20 and 40%. Mental health, risky behaviors, healthier pregnancies, healthier next generation, high school sports. So like that is the big game of what you're doing. And again, if you have this idea of the military as your sports is this highly hierarchical, the more hierarchical, the more problems you're going to have with coaches abusing their athletes in every way possible, including sexual abuse. Um, so, yeah, so that's number three. And and I guess lastly is go look at your athletic program, see how the football team and your baseball, how do they travel? What kind of medical care do they get? What kind of, do they are like, how would a girl versus a boy look at their sports experience? Are they getting what the boys are getting? And so many of the things that kids really pay attention to are free. So, what do they say over the loudspeaker? Are they part of the pep rallies? Are they, what gets put on the website? What gets put on, what gets, promoted? All that stuff is really important to the kid, to the athletes that are there. So look at your athletic department from the perspective of the athlete.
Boy, great, great information. Are you sure you're not an athletic director? Okay. That was just great stuff. And I love that one. I love them all, but your phrase, teach them to love their bodies. Again, I don't think I had any coaches that abused me. I don't think our coaches, but it's a cumulative thing. And again, we're not just coaching them for those 4 years we have them in high school or college. We're coaching them for the rest of their life. Great, great stuff. Nancy, I can't thank you enough for coming on, sharing your journey, sharing your tools. Again, if one of our listeners wants to reach out, find out more about the foundation or just connect with you, how do they do that? How do they connect with Nancy Hogshead?
So our website, championwomen.org, it's really good stuff. And we have another website, Title IX Schools, TITLEIX schools.com. Those two, we provide really value added, good information. It's not just like girls sports are great, right? We actually have tools that will be helpful to you as an athletic director.
And I can attest to that. Nancy sent me a bunch of stuff. I went to the sites and she's absolutely right. It's tremendous stuff. I wish I would have had some when I was an athletic director. So, Nancy, all the best moving forward. Hopefully, we can connect here since we're not that far away. And boy, we got to get you to at least our state AD conference and our national AD conference coming up to speak. Great resource.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jake. I really appreciate this long opportunity that you've given me.
It was long, but it was quality. Okay.
Really.
For our listeners, just a reminder that we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day. We try to share stories and best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.